Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up, the WNW 164 for Friday, October 31st, 2014. Yes, happy Halloween. And the Ebola Scarefest. The Ebola circus continues. I mean, the doctor that comes back to New York City and lies to police about riding the subway and, going to the bowling alley. That's what he did. They had to check his Metro card. The nurse that comes back, from West Africa and, the governor of New Jersey wanted to quarantine her. She pitched a fit and got released. The Obama administration big-footed, governors in New York, New Jersey, Illinois. They want to, have these quarantines, which is, grounded in science. And this nurse, who is also a CDC intelligence officer, goes back up to Maine and says, I'm not going to quarantine myself, out for a bike ride, doing whatever. And, it's unbelievable that this entire circus, this entire chaos is going on. I'm going to tell you, I wonder if it's too stupid to be stupid, but it's at least gross incompetence, if nothing else. But look at this headline right here. It says, this is from an AP, and it's a review, and it says, health system not prepared for Ebola. The health system not prepared for Ebola. This is the headline in an AP story, and that's in stark contrast to what we've been told. The story also goes on to say small clusters could overwhelm the system. So my question is, if small clusters can overwhelm the system, why in the world are we taking a chance on letting people from West Africa into that? Why do we keep issuing visas and also stamping passports to allow people from West Africa to come here with no quarantine? Why do we allow doctors and nurses to come back in here without quarantining them? Governors in these states are rightly freaked out. It's their job to protect their citizens. I thought that was President Obama's job, to protect Americans first and foremost, not worry about West Africa. And listen, if America turns in, if we start a Ebola-type, pandemic here in America, which a lot of people say won't happen, but if one starts, or if one is perceived to be starting, West Africa can forget it. America has to stay strong to help West Africa. I mean, this is why when you're flying, it says, if there's a device over your that'll come down, an air device, a breathing device, oxygen will come down. If we suddenly lose a pressure in the cabin, and if you're traveling with small children, put your oxygen mask on first. Why? Because if the parent's dead, the kid's dead. If America is crippled by this Ebola virus, then Africa is going to have a hard time getting help from us. We have to stay strong to help other people. We have to stay strong because it's the president's job to keep us strong. And I'm telling you, the opinion pages are absolutely nonsensical, ridiculous, bizarre. Here's one in USA Today this week, and it says, government hasty quarantine adds to Ebola problems. Oh, that's right. These governors worried about their citizens, trying to quarantine people so they can't spread disease adds to their problems. And, in this article, and these are the talking points, and I noticed it here, another one, we ought to be treating these doctors and nurses like, returning conquering heroes. Well, I don't think a lot of people are going to consider them a hero if they infect people with Ebola. I mean, this is nonsensical, crazy time, PC, political correctness, and we have to worry about, these people being, treated well, and they're heroes. And so, in other words, you have to take the risk, America. You have to take the risk. That's all there's to it. Now, I've got Warren Pollack on, who's an analyst. He's a multifaceted analyst, and he comes on next week, and he has a pretty interesting take about Ebola. And he says, hey, listen, this is the status quo, wanting to keep the lanes open, and little people are, they're expendable. And so, this is a nonsensical, crazy time, ridiculous, totally not grounded in science. I mean, I've said this before. Quarantine is one of the number one scientific procedures to stop the spread of infectious disease. And, I mean, the Obama administration doesn't think so, but hey, I'll tell you what, the Pentagon sure does. Ebola quarantine policies vary. Oh, yeah, they vary. Oh, that's a nice soft pedaling. Take a look closer to the sub-headline, and it says, that the Army that it took its soldiers from Africa and is putting them in quarantine for 21 days. The Pentagon is putting its soldiers from Africa in quarantine for 21 days. That's the right thing to do, but I'll tell you, the people in Italy, where these soldiers, these American soldiers coming out of West Africa are being quarantined, are mad. They're hopping mad that these people got taken to their country. They're worried, and rightly so. I mean, they've had, 4,000 or 5,000 deaths already, 10,000 infections. Now, they say the infections are waning a bit, but then again, the World Health Organization says, well, we've had that before, it's waned, and then it's come right back, and, this is a mess. This is a big problem. And it's not being handled very well. And on top of that, the State Department is flying back Ebola victims to America. Now, we already have such a weak system that the AP says that even small clusters could swamp the systems, and we're going to add people to the system? Why don't we treat them over there? Why don't we send, medical personnel and technicians and set up field hospitals over there to keep it over there? Why do we want to bring people here to keep track of? Wouldn't it be easier if we didn't have to keep track of them? We could keep them over there. Listen, I know these health professionals are heroes. I know they are, but they can't. But them being a hero doesn't mean that they can come here and be reckless. And if a doctor doesn't understand the symptoms, and this is the doctor that's rode the subway, went to the bowling alley and out to eat and all this other stuff, if a doctor doesn't understand the symptoms, or if he could get infected even though he's trying not to, if that can happen, then a poor schlub like you and me on a bus doesn't have a chance. And yes, Ebola can last on the surface from a sneeze or from sweat or whatever. Yes, you can contact it that way, and some people say that it might even morph or mutate into becoming airborne. But this is a serious health problem. And listen, whether it's contrived, whether it's perceived, or whether it's real, listen, if people even think that they could be exposed to Ebola if this goes on into the Christmas holiday shopping season, do you think people are going to be going out to eat? Riding the subway? Riding buses? You think people are going to be going to the movies? Going to the mall shopping? Do you think that's going to happen if people think, even though it's not justified, even if they think they might catch Ebola? That could tank the economy, couldn't it? Of course it could. I mean, it's quite ridiculous. And I'm worried about it, and it's a circus. I tell you, it's a real circus. The Federal Reserve supposedly ended its QE, and, I read a couple different newspaper articles. This is the USA Today again, and here it is, that the, Fed stimulus era comes to an end. The Fed stimulus era is over. Hey, happy days are here again. They only printed $1.6 trillion. They said they printed the money to hold interest rates down. And, what they're really doing is propping up the banking system, which is still in trouble. But the Fed, just take them at their word, they said they printed all this money to hold interest rates down. Well, if they're going to stop printing money, how are they going to hold interest rates down? Some of the articles said, oh, well, they printed enough money to hold interest rates down for a while. Really? I talked to my friend Greg Manarino and said, Greg, I mean, are they going to just put this money out for bids, put these treasury bonds out for bids and let people bid on them? I mean, who is going to, give them money for 10 years for 2.3% for a 10-year treasury? Who's going to do that? Are they going to put it out for bids and people are going to bid it up to, 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 5%? No. Listen, the economy, credit card holders, mortgage holders, the economy can't handle higher interest rates. That's the whole point. And as Greg Manarino from TradersChoice.net, a friend of mine and a regular on this program, said, hey, listen, they can't just, say we want low interest rates. They have to do something to make them low. And he says, listen, the QE is not ending. Oh, they're going to call it something else. But the QE is not ending, according to him. He says, here's what he thinks going on. They're going to make the banks buy these treasury bonds. They have given them all this QE, and at least for a while, they're going to make them take that printed money, and they're going to make them buy these treasury bonds. And he says he thinks they're going to finance it on top of that when that money runs out. He says the federal government cannot handle a higher interest rate. The economy, car loans, home loans, credit cards can't handle higher interest rates. Just can't. So it's QE to infinity. They'll call it by another name, but QE to infinity. And my take on that is, the Federal Reserve says that, the economy grew by 3.5% in the third quarter. 3.5% it grew. I'm thinking, what? I mean, where are they getting this growth? John Williams at shadowstats.com, who's also another regular on this site, took a look at the 3.5% growth number, and he says the 3.5% growth rate is, quote, happy election eve numbers. Have you noticed how also gasoline prices have dipped down below 3% in most places in the country? Have you noticed that big dip right before the election? Have you noticed that? But he says they are, quote, happy election eve numbers, and he says it was boosted by, quote, guessing at trade numbers and also by defense spending, end quote. Williams says, look for a big downward revision to that 3.5% third quarter number coming up, but right now they are happy election eve numbers. And if the economy, my take, if the economy was really that good, would 93 million people be out of work, outside the workforce, give up for work, as the government says? Would 93 million people be out of the workforce? I mean, that's like, what, more than 3-decade lows of people out of the workforce. 93 million Americans out of, what, 315 million people, a third of the American not working? A half of Americans make $28,000, around $28,000 or less in America. Half, 50% of American workers. I mean, also the job growth. I mean, the Federal Reserve says, hey, the economy and employment have made gains. Yeah, if you count part-time jobs, that's what's exploding. Part-time jobs with Obamacare benefits, not good benefits, Obamacare benefits. Go to the exchange and get your benefits. And another thing that I wanted to bring up about the economy, Alan Greenspan, former Fed head, was speaking in front of the Council on Foreign Relations. And he is worried about the turmoil that ending QE could cause, although a lot of people say it's not going to end. But he's worried about the turmoil, and it's not going to be a smooth transition. At some point, it's going to end. Either they're going to stop it or it'll quit working, but at some point, it's going to end. You know what else Alan Greenspan told the audience at the Council on Foreign Relations he was talking to? He says, buy gold. I'm not kidding you. Let that sink in. Former Federal Reserve Chief Alan Greenspan just told people to buy gold. That pretty much says all you want to know about what's coming down the tracks in the economy. Buy physical gold. Violence appears to be flaring up again in Israel. I mean, this is another sad chapter that's coming down the tracks in Israel. And an Israeli was shot at the famous Temple Mount, or it's also known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The site was closed down after the shooting of an Israeli right-wing activist. The Israelis just closed it down. This is pretty much a site that only Muslims want to be at and control. This right-wing activist says Israelis ought to have access to the Temple Mount. This is a highly contested religious site in a highly contested city in Jerusalem. And now Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Fatwa Party, the head of the Palestinian authority, says that he's calling for a day of rage. He's calling for violence. And violence is expected. Keep an eye on Israel with the Israelis and the Palestinians. I do not see how that fight over land ends peacefully. I hope I'm wrong. Finally, I just received notification for my health care premiums. No, it's not a happy day. My health care premiums are going up in 2015 by $100 a month. And, it's been reported the reason why healthcare premiums are going up is because of young people just didn't sign up for all that healthcare that they were supposed to, pay into the system and not use it. So, other people could get a deal and get cheap healthcare and all the subsidies and all that. Young people aren't buying it. They didn't go into the system. And also, I think Blue Cross and Blue Shield, my healthcare provider, said, well, we have to raise rates because, young people didn't show up in the numbers we needed to keep the rates low. And so, and I don't have any problem against Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I don't have any gripe with them. I mean, providing health care is expensive, especially when you have a terrible law with a bunch of junk in it that you have to provide, like sex change operations, abortions, birth control pills, vision, dental. I mean, nothing's too good for the people who can't pay for it. And so my health care benefits, my health care premiums, I should say, are going up by $100 a month. Oh, happy days. They let me keep my plan. I don't have to go into the, the Obamacare yet. I'm going to be forced into it later. So that's the big surprise for a lot of people. Their employers in 2015. Oh, unless they extend it again with all the other, exemptions and extensions, there are going to be employers dropping you from your plan. You think you're fat and happy and it doesn't affect you. Oh, no. Premiums are going to rise. Deductibles are going to rise. Copays are going to rise. That's what happened to me. So now take my, my increase, which incidentally, since the Obamacare law was passed, my health care premiums in North Carolina have gone up 60%. This was supposed to be cheaper. We were all told it was going to be cheaper. We're going to save money. $2,500 a year savings. Oh, no. No, not $2,500 a year savings. No. Now, for me, it's going to cost me probably $2,500 a year more with the 60% increases. I mean, this is outrageous. And what's really outrageous is we were lied to by the Democrats. And I'm not a Republican, but the Democrats lied as a party to get this piece of you-know-what passed. You can't keep your doctor for many people. You can't keep your health care plan. They're already telling me that I can have it for another year. So I'm not going to be able to keep my plan after this. I'm going to be forced into the, Obamacare, Obama scare. I'm going to be forced into it eventually, like a lot of you are too. And, Kay Hagan is the senator here in North Carolina fighting for her life against Tillis. I don't much like the Republican either, but, I like him a lot better than Kay Hagan. And, the fly in the ointment, I have predicted that Kay Hagan will be fired. There are signs all over Greensboro, all over North Carolina that say, fire Kay Hagan. And, there's a libertarian candidate as well. And listen, I like the libertarians, but he's probably going to siphon off those from Tillis. If Tillis loses, that's the only reason why he'll lose. But I think the libertarian candidates will probably go in there and say, lesser of three evils, I'm going to take Tillis. We'll have less tyranny. I think that's my prediction. I think Tillis knocks Hagan out of the box. And then the advertising, with Hagan's doing nasty advertising. He's got ethical problems. He's against women. But you know what she's not telling me? She's not telling me what she's going to do. How about fixing Obamacare? Make my premiums go down, Senator Hagan. Oop, can't do that. Multiply my $100 a month increase by millions and millions of people that have to pay more, because most people have to pay more. Multiply that by millions and millions of people across the country. And some people, I got lucky, really. $100 a month more from me is pretty lucky. A lot of people are paying $200, $300, $400. They're paying, 70% more, 100% more, 200% more. But multiply the premium increases by millions of people all across the country. And what do you suppose the effect will be on the economy here in 2015? Yeah. Thank you very much for supporting USA Watchdog. Thank you very much for your donations. That helps us. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. And remember, the news isn't all that bad. Fear not. Governors in these states are rightly freaked out. It's their job to protect their citizens. I thought that was President Obama's job, to protect Americans first and foremost, not worry about West Africa. And listen, if America turns in, if we start a Ebola-type, pandemic here in America, which a lot of people say won't happen, but if one starts, or if one is perceived to be starting, West Africa can forget it. America has to stay strong to help West Africa. I mean, this is why when you're flying, it says, if there's a device over the Obama administration, big-footed, governors in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, that want to, have these quarantines, which is, grounded in science. And this nurse, who is also a CDC intelligence officer, goes back up to Maine and says, I'm not going to quarantine myself, out for a bike ride, doing whatever. And, it's unbelievable that this entire circus, this entire chaos is going on. I'm going to tell you, I wonder if it's too stupid to be stupid, but it's at least gross incompetence, if nothing else. But look at this headline right here. It says, this is from an AP, and it's a review, and it says, health system not... Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up, the WNW 164 for Friday, October 31st, 2014. Yes, happy Halloween. And the Ebola scarefest. The Ebola circus continues. I mean, the doctor that comes back to New York City and lies to police about riding the subway and, going to the bowling alley. That's what he did. They had to check his Metro card. The nurse that comes back, from West Africa and, the governor of New Jersey wanted to quarantine her. She pitched a fit and got released. That'll come down, an air device, a breathing device, oxygen will come down if we suddenly lose a pressure in the cabin. And if you're traveling with small children, put your oxygen mask on first. Why? Because if the parent's dead, the kid's dead. If America is crippled by this Ebola virus, then Africa is going to have a hard time getting help from us. We have to stay strong to help other people. We have to stay strong because it's the president's job to keep us strong. And I'm telling you, the opinion pages are absolutely nonsensical, ridiculous, bizarre. Here's one in USA Today this week. And prepared for Ebola. The health system not prepared for Ebola. This is the headline in an AP story, and that's in stark contrast to what we've been told. The story also goes on to say small clusters could overwhelm the system. So my question is, if small clusters can overwhelm the system, why in the world are we taking a chance on letting people from West Africa into that? Why do we keep issuing visas and also stamping passports to allow people from West Africa to come here with no quarantine? Why do we allow doctors and nurses to come back in here without quarantining them?